Hello there. My name is Jean Weeb, and I have a question for you. What is an amphibian? Can you talk to the person on your left and see if you can give each other clues as to what an amphibian is? All right, great. Did you say that amphibians can live on land or in the water? Did you say that amphibians can be frogs or toads or salamanders or newts? Frogs have lungs for breathing, but they can also breathe through their skins. Frogs and toads have no tail, no fur, no feathers, no scales, no neck. Frogs have feet that are made for digging or for climbing or for swimming, however they have to live, and they have great big eyes. All of the frogs in my pictures here show big eyes. The irises can be several really pretty colors, but having big eyes lets them see their food coming. It also lets them see their enemies coming. The pupil of their eyes can be round. I think that's what I've seen the most. Or they can be triangular. They can even be heart-shaped. Isn't that interesting? Some frogs bury themselves up to their eyeballs to wait and watch for their lunch to come along. Some frogs spend their whole lives up in trees, like in rainforests. They sleep and eat and mate and lay eggs up in the trees. They really like insects, frogs and toads. I have a few flies here for my amphibians. This fella, look at him. This fella can even eat rats and mice. He's big. When frogs hibernate, they dig down into the mud at the bottom of a river or pond, or get under a log, or even underground. And it's interesting that frogs that live where it's very, very cold in the winter get underneath there, and the ice and snow on top makes an insulation layer that helps keep them warm. Frogs that live in very, very hot places also hibernate, but they hibernate in the summer. They get underneath something and dig down and are buried, and they wait for the rains to come to cool things off before they get out and come out of their hibernation. And it's interesting that while frogs are hibernating, their hearts can stop beating. They can even stop breathing. That slows down all their body processes and helps them to use their energy that's already stored in their bodies until it's time for them to wake up. That's a really special thing to be able to do. That's because they're cold-blooded and their bodies don't have to have a constant feeding of energy from food. I want to show you some of the special things about some of these frogs that I have photographs of. Here is a Weekly Reader big issue that has a very brightly colored frog, and its headline says, "Why do some frogs have special skin?" The skin gives off a poison that keeps other animals away. Scientists say those frogs eat lots of ants. The ants have a poison in their bodies. When the frogs eat the ants, the poison goes into the frog's skin, and it helps the frogs to ward off its enemies. This headline says, "Can frogs cure people?" Did you know that the most colorful frogs, the poisonous frogs that live in places like the rainforests, have poisons in them, in their skin or in their bodies, that scientists and researchers are working with and are saying might be able to help kill germs in human beings or can help make medicines to stop pain or cure certain diseases. Frogs like to eat insects and flies and are a very, very important part of the food chain. They are important for keeping flies and bugs under control, and they provide food for many larger animals and birds and fish. So frogs are a vitally important part of the food chain. There's a poster behind me that says, "Where in the world are frogs?" They're all over the world. Frogs are very important in the ecology, in the balance of nature, all over the world. They seems very simple, and yet they're very special because they're so important. This is Amazing Frogs and Toads, an Eyewitness Junior's book, and it's about tadpoles. It shows how frogs lay eggs. You may have seen in little ponds and ditches with water, you may have seen little teeny tiny tadpoles. They are so cute, and they're tiny, tiny when they first hatch. Then they grow, their bodies grow bigger and fatter, their tails grow longer, and they're constantly swimming, looking around for food. Then, eventually, they have little hind legs that start to form, and then their front legs form, and then they look more like frogs, and they get out of the water part of the time then. We need to be careful when we are using the world around us, that we protect the homes of frogs because they are such an important part of the food cycle. When we can look at living things like frogs and the things that are in their environment, we can know that something is governing this, that something is making this happen and keep happening in the same way that is perfect, that fits a plan. Who could have designed frogs and toads and newts and salamanders, all amphibians, so that they're perfect for their environments, so that they're perfect for helping the whole rest of the world, so that they're perfect for helping us to make medicines and test medicines? Who do you suppose did that? What is a reptile? And I want you to turn and speak to your neighbors very quietly and share what is a reptile. Did I hear someone say that it's an animal that's cold-blooded and that has to get into the sunlight to get out on rocks in order to get warm? A snake, a turtle, a lizard. You're right. Reptiles live all over the world. One kind of reptile is the snake. They live in many different habitats all around the world, in mountains, in deserts, in tropical rainforests. They come in all sizes, all colors. They are very interesting to study. As a reptile grows, it outgrows its skin because its skin doesn't grow with it, so it has to shed its skin or its scales every once in a while. A snake has 2 nostrils, but it doesn't smell. It only breathes through its nostrils. It has to smell with its tongue. It sticks its tongue out into the air and comes in contact with little particles of scent that are in the air, and then it tastes those, and that's how it smells. They don't hear with their ears either. They feel vibrations in the ground. Snakes have infrared sensors They can sense heat. And when a mouse is going by in the dark at night, it can feel the heat from the mouse's body. And then it can have its dinner. Yuck. But it thinks it's delicious. This works very well for small animals like mice that the snake is hunting for. But it would not work for a frog if a frog were nearby. Can you think why it doesn't work for a snake to find a frog this way? Can you turn back to your neighbor and see if you can figure out why it would work for a mouse but not for a frog? Did you say because a mouse has body heat but a frog doesn't? A frog is cold-blooded, so it doesn't show up on this heat sensor. Snakes can hide because of their coloring. They can blend into their surroundings, and they also have a little trick. They can act. Here's a really pretty snake. Can you see this? It has no teeth. Can you see its mouth? But it's opening its mouth up huge and wide, trying to act ferocious, to scare off predators. But it really wouldn't be able to attack. It can also act like it's dead. This picture shows a snake here and a snake here with its head upside down, and it's lying real still so that anything that wants it for dinner would think it was already dead. Here's a snake whose head is here, but whose tail has a bright red undercoating, so that if it thinks it's being attacked, it can hide its head, and it can turn its tail over and curl it up like this so that a predator would go for the bright color and think that that was the head and try to have its lunch down there, which would not hurt the snake nearly as much as if the predator got it by the head. One thing that people think of when we think of snakes is, oh no, that might be poisonous. But did you know that there are many hundreds of different kinds of snakes and only a few that are poisonous? Only a few snakes have poison, and that poison might seem to be something that is cruel at first, but it really isn't. When a snake is hunting something that's pretty big, like a rabbit or a big rat or other animals that we would think are small but that would seem pretty big to a snake, it can use its poison to quickly kill its prey. That way it gets its food. If there were not snakes to control the populations of rabbits and mice and other small animals, they would eat and grow and their families would multiply, and as cute as rabbits and mice are, they would get to be so many that they would eat up all of their food supply. They wouldn't have enough food. Then they would suffer because snakes and other animals eat those smaller animals. It controls their populations and it actually helps. Here is a book about lizards. Lizards are also reptiles and have scales on their bodies to collect heat. They also have the two little nostrils, but they don't smell with those. They only breathe with them. Just like snakes, they have to use their tongues to smell the air, which is actually like tasting the air. Lizards all have legs. No, they don't, come to think of it. I read a book about a couple of lizards that don't have legs, that kind of resemble snakes. That's interesting. We'd have to know the difference. A lizard of one kind can lose its tail. If something comes along and tries to have it for lunch, it can lose its tail, give up its tail. The rest of its body is kept safe, and while the predator is eating the tail, the lizard can get away, and then he grows a new one. This one has grown a new one from right here on out. Very interesting. That is a green day gecko. that operates like that. Ooh, eyes of lizards. They don't have eyelids either. The pupil closes. The little center of the eye closes while the gecko sleeps. Here's the eye of a chameleon. It can turn its eyes separately in all directions. If you've seen one of these on an animal program on TV, that is really yucky to watch. But it keeps them safe. It lets them see all around in both sides, in both directions at the same time. Isn't that neat? Here is a very interesting little guy, a Tokay Gecko. This picture came from a weekly reader in school a long time ago, and I haven't found a better picture to use, so here he still is, even though his picture is pretty old. They have very special feet with thousands and thousands of little hairs, hair-like scales on their feet, and even those little hair-like scales have even smaller ones on them, so that they can cling to surfaces that they want to walk on. They can even walk upside down on ceilings, bottoms of branches, whatever he wants to walk on, because his little feet can cling to surfaces of all kinds, even smooth glass. And here's a really recent article that I cut out of a newspaper about those little hair-like things that are on the bottoms of his feet. Scientists are now thinking that those little things are so tiny that they're getting in between the little tiniest parts, the little molecules of the material that they're walking on, and that helps them to cling. When they walk, they don't just plop, plop, plop down their feet. Their little toes roll up and roll back like whistles that you blow at a party. And so it's a special motion that the gecko feet makes that helps those little hairs to get in place and cling to whatever it wants to walk on. Isn't that a perfect idea? Who do you think thought of all of these perfect ways for these animals to live? Did you think of it? Do you think that someone long time ago thought of it? I want you to think about who that someone could be. Someone who knew everything. Someone who knew exactly how these animals would have to be able to live. Who do you think designed all of these animals perfectly to help the earth, to help other animals, to help human beings? Who do you think that was? Of course, it was our God. God made everything perfect for us to be able to live and for animals to be able to live all over the world. Maybe you could go to the library, or maybe you already have and could share with your friends some of the things that you've seen. Find encyclopedias and magazines and books about these kinds of animals and see if you can find some unusual forms of these animals or some new ideas, some new facts about these, because scientists are constantly finding out new perfect things about animals. Everything that we find out lets us know all over again that God made it all perfect.